Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to this meeting of the Operational Services Committee. This meeting is being live streamed. Should the live stream go down, we will suspend the meeting until it can be restarted. Okay, on to the agenda. Do we have any public questions? No public questions. Do we have any apologies or substitutions?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Christine Colbert and apologies from Catherine Holtzman. John Trapp is subbing for Christine Colbert.
It's always a pleasure, John, as you know. I think we are expecting Councillor Sharp. He may be delayed in the... There's an awful traffic, John. I quite agree. It's diversions everywhere. Okay, do we... Do you have any, do we have any declarations of interest? Agenda item number 3? No, perfect. I have no minutes. Okay, now I spotted some errors on page 8. Did anybody else spot those? 3 errors on there, which I have pointed out to Isabel, and they will be looked at. Do you have any other ones? I can't believe you found ones that I didn't find, Christine.
Page 4, my name's spelt wrong. It's down.
Yes, no, they're the ones I found.
Yeah.
Wheeler and Bins was the other one, the last paragraph, Bins.
Bin.
No, that's what we're just saying. It's Christine Wheeland.
Whelan. That's 1A.
Anyway, I think the officers have been charged with going away and re-looking at the minutes to get the spelling errors corrected.
Okay.
Other than that, are we content for me to sign those as an accurate recording of effectively what was said, even if it wasn't doesn't appear like that in that meeting? Yes, perfect. In which case then I have no chair's announcements, so we will move swiftly on to agenda item 6, which is the Community Safety Partnership 6-monthly report. And lovely to see Liz Every and Emma, who are going to delight us.
Thank you, Chair. As members will be aware, this committee is the scrutiny committee for the East Cambs Community Safety Partnership. The CSP terms of reference requires that either the chair or vice chair of the CSP provides an update to committee twice a year. Therefore, I am pleased to introduce Liz Every, chair of the CSP, who will be providing members with an update this evening.
Thank you, Emma. Good afternoon, Chair and councillors and officers. Thank you so much for inviting me to present the latest report to you as our scrutiny committee. And I always welcome this opportunity because it gives us an opportunity to tell you what we've been doing over the last 6 months, which I think is really important. You will have had an opportunity to read the report, and it is a long report, but we try to put as much of what's been going on into that report so that you do understand what's happening, because it's really important for our district councillors to be aware of what's going on in their own patches. The more that we can tell you, the better we feel it would be. However, there are a number of points that I would like to highlight to you. Firstly, I would like to reiterate the value of the partnership. The knowledge and understanding we have of each of our partners and their priorities and limitations is key to effective partnership working. And the ability to pull together different partners for different issues and activities is incredibly effective. We are, in fact, the only partnership board that pulls together all of the agencies, and the ability that our officers have to do that and make a prompt response is quite amazing. And I think it's fair to say that we're more agile in East Cambs than we are in some of the other areas. Just a reminder that our problem-solving group, which has over 20 member representatives from all the schools and agencies, are dealing with the lower level grassroots issues, and solutions are mostly identified there. More serious issues are escalated to the delivery group with operational representatives from our partners, where collaborative task and finish groups are formed to identify more wide-reaching solutions. Both the PSG and delivery group report upwards to the main board, but major problems are strategically dealt with by the statutory Higher Harms Board, and other central agency boards set up from central government are fed down to the CSP. So to give you the perspective that we have problems moving up, but we also have overarching strategic issues coming down. You will have noted that the two CSP priorities, and perhaps noticed that we have more specific focus on tackling violence, plus further research requested on page 1 of the report. Violence, it was suggested that we have a strategic assessment every year, and it was suggested that this was a word that we should put in overtly rather than just talk about just issues. Discussions on common priorities for the CSP and the East Cambridgeshire Integrated Neighbourhood Board have resulted in identified common themes where working together will avoid duplication and identify any gaps. This has been an innovation this last year, and it has been worked particularly well. So we have large agencies, large boards working together, sharing our themes and actually ensuring that we actually know what our key KPIs are. We have subsequently received the second of the further research and are working collaboratively on the youth voice. Just to let you know, this is what we do. We have a strategic assessment which tells us exactly what the issues are right across the East Cambridgeshire. And then we commissioned 2 more deep dives, and this is the first one that's come out. And this is new, and I'm quite happy to share this with, I'm allowed to share this with anyone, you never know, with anybody who wants, because this is all about antisocial behaviour. And what we asked them to do was to look where specifically we had antisocial behaviour, what it was looking like, who was likely to be perpetrating it, and what should we be doing about it. I think it's fair, it's really fair to say that we are a low crime area compared to others. So to be absolutely clear, when we start talking about spikes, we are talking about spikes from here to here rather than from here to here. And also to say that spikes will appear if we have incidents where many people report, rather than an incident where one person reports. And I can't stress enough the importance of reporting any incidents that there are, because that notice that we get, the numbers, that the volume that we get, brings it to our focus, and then we can set the teams out. All the agencies have collaborated on a district-wide youth survey, and I know there are people around the table who are really keen on what's going on with youth. We believe we've integrated all of the questions that we were about to have 5 different surveys go into schools to talk to children. That's not going to work. So we put them together, and this has been, I think, got a better chance of getting their views. However, I have to say that surveys are not necessarily the right way to do this. This is my personal view, because I know from working in schools that some youngsters will just sit down and think of the possibly worst things they could possibly say, which will skew everything. So to be fair, I think their own internal social media works better. But it is absolutely vital that we work with our young people and learn what matters to them. From the deep dive on antisocial behaviour, there are 3 identified categories: nuisance, personal no risk, and personal standard risk, and antisocial behaviour involving young people. We have learnt that nuisance is by far the largest antisocial behaviour category, and that's about neighbourhood disputes, environmental attacks, and so on. And actually, I was out at Burwell today to look at a local dispute that's been going on for some time to support Emma and the work that she's doing. But there are pockets of higher youth antisocial behaviours in Ely East and West, Littleport, Fordham, Isleham, Soham, Streatham, Bottersham, and Burwell. Now, this is important to note this, because these are all your divisions, and I'm sure you would want to know what's going on. But also want to explain that for us, the most important work is not only dealing with what's going on, but to provide a series of activities and work in advance, which is preventative, to prevent this escalating anymore. And what we absolutely know is that our youngsters have little to do where they are, and services have been cut in terms of youth services and youth clubs, etc. So we are working as hard as we can on youth provision. Now, if I tell you that Haddenham has got a youth council, and they work to the parish council. That works extremely well. Just a few youngsters who are keen that their area is nicely looked after and they've got activities and they engage. Just something to think about in your own areas. But I'd like to demonstrate positive preventative work that's been done. There were the Youth Fusion events, which were coordinated by your own youth champion at East Cambs in Burwell and Haddenham, and the Gateway Street Project, where you will have seen the street art. This is not graffiti, this is street art on the underpass to a high, has been absolutely amazing, but we need to do the other end. So that was funded by the City Council, so that was absolutely great. And of course, the court experience that we do regularly with all our secondary schools are on preventative knife crime. As I said, I have got it if anybody wants to look at it, because it does focus on your own areas. It does, as I said, it does show how important reporting is. I have to say that engaging with councillors and parish councils is a key factor in identifying and pursuing active solutions. We have more active engagement with some than with others, and we would welcome more involvement and engagement with East Cambs councillors, and actually would ask you how we might do that. We are happy to work with you all. If you could tell us what would be the best way to do that, that works for us, and I think it works for you, because it gives you the heads up of what's going on in your area, and the last thing you need to know is to find out something when it's too late to do that. So please do talk to us. So we have provided you with a full report of what we've been doing as a CSP, because we wanted to give you awareness of the breadth and width of the collaborative approach. And I hope you found it useful and informative, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Liz. Does anybody have any questions for Liz? I for one, would love a copy of that report. Can I say, I think probably all councillors would welcome a copy of that report.
Of the deep dive.
The deep dive.
We can get that.
Not just, not just this committee, but
all
I think
councillors.
for all councillors,
Yes.
please. I think it would be very illuminating. Sorry, Mark, who had councillor Inskip, and then Lucius.
Can I have an electronic copy, not paper copy, please?
Oh, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So just a quick, one comment and a couple of questions. Community Safety Forum. So in Sutton, we've said we do want to host that. So
It's sort of
Yeah.
great, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
so that was that.
You're not high on our list of priorities, as you could see, but we would very much welcome you
Yeah.
going to Sutton.
Just wanted to talk about, you've got a couple of sort of challenges on the board membership. So you haven't had the probation service attendant yet.
No.
And the other one was you were looking to get somebody from local education. So I just wonder if you could comment on those.
Yes,
things.
yeah. So we have tried endlessly to get the probationary service. And in fact, we both, Emma and I both went to Huntington to speak to them, and they assured us that they would come. And they never have. They were always overworked. I get that. They are overworked, but they are a statutory partner, and we've been back, I think, to getting somebody below us, I think, who's going to be able to, below the person we spoke to, who's going to be able to do that. The issue we have is that if we don't have this kind of representation, we do not know what's going on in our patch with reoffending. We don't know where we have siblings who are in families that are being challenged through this kind of thing. So if any of you can have any help, give us any help to get that, then we would. It's not for the want of trying, Councillor Inskip, and we will continue to do that. We don't believe that we have a high issue in the area, but that's not the point. What we want to do is we need to understand what is going on in our area and to be able to respond. And also, if we have youngsters that are in families who are likely to be drawn into crime, we need to be working with them. Was there a second question? I missed that, I think.
The education one was the other one. You were getting an education rep.
No, business.
Oh, why
Is
you
it-
said-
no,
it
have I
does say-
got that wrong? No.
Oh, I know I was going to ask about business. I forgot to ask about that, but you said you'll be seeking a representation from local education.
Yeah. That's something we are fed up. No, we're not. We are fed up with information from the PSP. But it would be really nice if we could have one of the school's senior leaders on the CSP. And we have actually tried to get the representation from the student council from Bishop Laney, because that's post 16 and that would work. So yes, we would like to have somebody who would be able to give us an overview. We have got one, but we would like to have that endorsed. And so we're working on that. And also we lost our representation from the Federation of Small Businesses. That was incredibly useful, because that was the first time we'd really worked with businesses, and that's where we had the drink spiking, helpful with that. But also we were able to put out information about crime within businesses, and obviously this is a rural area, and that's really, really important too.
It's great to see you. I'm just looking at the end of the youth section of the report. We've looked particularly at detached youth work in Burwell, Soham and Littleport. Are we looking at broadly the same kinds of antisocial behaviour crimes across these areas? And what kind of services are we using to combat them? I know in Soham we were looking at the connections buses and things like that that have come.
Yes, all our youth work is in collaboration with Lizzie Houghton, who is the Cambridgeshire County Council Youth Coordinator. So we are fixed into the community, into Cambridgeshire County. With the antisocial behaviour, this normally comes through the forums that we've been doing. So we know that, for example, in Burwell, which was a surprise to us all, but it's changed quite a lot. This was about a small group of youngsters who have nothing to do, and they did want things to do. We have had a youth forum with them and the council. We still haven't been able to actually get anything there, although we've had money injected for goalposts and so on. It's about children being listened to, about what it is that they want. I understand that in Fordham, the youth club has closed because that's all not to say, but because there was a cost to the hall and they couldn't.
Loss of venue.
And we're on to that as well. But where the bus that you're talking about provides a provision every week where they can go, meet, talk, hang out. And all the youngsters really want to do is to do that as long as there's Wi-Fi there as well. And also parish councils, if they would just listen to their youngsters, to get some common ground, once you start working with them, you turn a problem into a solution. So the more dialogue there is between the parish councils and the youngsters, the better. These are bright young children, and the danger is that if they're not drawn into really enjoying their own environment, there are concerns that others will show them a different environment that we don't want them to be involved with.
Questions for, Councillor Trapp.
I'm surprised that the Fordham Parish Council doesn't help pay for the hall.
Yeah.
And also, if I can say, I did notice that East Cambridgeshire Police Cadets are the largest in the county. Why are they so large?
Because we have a very good leader with a very good programme, which is supported financially. And we've just seems to have engaged the youngsters incredibly well. And the word of mouth between them has been great. So it has grown. And also what we have provided them with is opportunities to be seen, to be engaged with what's going on, to take a role. And that, although originally it was planned that perhaps cadets were to encourage youngsters not to take the wrong route, we have a large number of the youngsters in the cadets who are going to become police people. So I don't know whether that's the wrong route. So that's absolutely, absolutely great. But we have a fantastic leader, and it is about leadership.
I mean, is it worth extending this, getting some of the cadets to go to different villages, different parishes?
They do. They do, and it's a really good idea, Councillor Chair. We could do more of that. I think that's something we'll take on board. Thank you.
Maybe we could all give some thought and email Liz about how we would like to engage with her in terms of our own villages and wards, and the best way of moving forward, whether or not we have maybe just a general meeting with just all the councillors and you. I don't know how we could perhaps put a seminar together. It could be
That would be great.
online. I'm just coming up with ideas on the hoof here of a way of actually us sort of saying, I mean, I think we all are aware of issues in our villages. And sometimes just think, you know, I've no idea how we go about tackling this.
Well, you do come to us, we would welcome that, because as I said, we've got Emma, but we have two other officers that you know of and that's quite a high level of staffing that we have. They were either in the police or attached to the police. But what they have is the ability to pull in all of those agencies. So you've got health, you've got education, you've got the police, and that collaborative approach, no agency has the right solution, but pulling those together. And that's when the forum, so as we go to Sutton, and you can report back on that, Councillor Inskeep, it is about listening to the people, identifying what the problems are, but not to do the solutions to them, but that they are part of the solution, but working with all the agencies, whichever are appropriate for the issues that we've got. So we tend to do 2 forums a year, because it's quite intensive in terms of time, because then we draw up an action plan and then work on the action plan and go back and so on. But that really, really works. So, and we've done them in Littleport, so, well, most places. So, but talk to us and we will work with you on listening to what you want, but also being able to tell you what there is out there that we could use. What we are going to have to, is a high profile for us, is that we don't have any excess funding, because we have put all our funding, our own funding, into staffing, which we have felt is the right thing to do. So, and there's only one fund now that the PCC has got, which is Safe Streets, and we can't apply for that because we don't have the same problems as other areas. So one of the things we'll be looking for is other forms of funding, because then we can provide better solutions, particularly for our young people.
Thank you, Liz. Does anybody else have anything for Liz and Emma? I'd just like to say thank you hugely for all the work that you do, because you know, and you talk about spikes, but I think sometimes when you're in a low crime area, any crime seems like a really big thing because we're just not used to it. I think that's what I would say from a Fordham point of view, and possibly an Isleham point of view, is that when it happens, it's quite a shock.
It is, and actually, it's when that happens, it does mean that we have to do something. We cannot be complacent, because there are too many external factors out there that can influence, and we need to be on it. And our team, we've got a fantastic team. And I have to say thank you to East Cambs as well, because obviously they host the team and they host our funding and so on, and they do all our paperwork, and we're very, very grateful, because we couldn't do it without them.
You're doing a fantastic job, and I think the whole committee would like to thank you and Emma for all your endeavours. Thank you very much. We're happy to note this report, committee. Thank you very much, Liz and Emma. Now move on to the Q2 performance report for the Waste and Street Cleansing Service. Good afternoon, Kat. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. You have before you the performance report for ECSS for the period July to September, which is for this committee to note. I'll be referring to the performance dashboards, and that starts on page 28 of your pack. Just to draw out a few key points of performance against the service's key performance indicators, with regards to productivity. On page 29, you'll note that ECSS just missed the target for sickness absence, which is highlighted in orange on the graph on the left-hand side. The graph on the right shows the split of that absence. The last 2 bars here show Q2 performance, blue being long-term absence, which is significantly less than short-term absence highlighted in orange. You can see from the trajectory of long-term absence for the year, it's significantly reduced, which has resulted from the robust policies put in place that were changed when the service was at its most stretched. Short-term absence has been a mix of the usual coughs and colds, etc., and continues to be dealt with through policies and support to employees where identified. Turning the page, the main graph is showing that overall missed collections are decreasing. This year is shown on the orange line, and the blue is the last year. Out of over 1 million scheduled collections due this quarter, just over 600 were missed and all were subsequently recovered. Turning to the next page, the quality of cleansing work remains high and above targets. On the left-hand graph, the blue bars show how many streets inspected following a cleanse were graded as an A against the target, which is the grey line. Over the page, this shows the amount of graffiti reported in the district. For Q2, this totaled 8. 5 of these instances involved offensive graffiti and needed immediate removal. However, as these were all on private property, the response time has been delayed, as shown on the right-hand side graph, as ECSS worked to obtain the landowner's permission, and these have all now been removed. Turning the page, target of removing fly tipping within 2 working days remains challenging to achieve. 74% of those fly tips were removed in the time against a target of 98%. And just to highlight here that during Q2, the service experienced a couple of very large fly tips in the district, causing a significant cost to ECSS to clear. They needed multiple lorries to clear what was deposited. They've been reported to the Environment Agency due to the size and possible link to a larger waste crime case. And then just the last slide on page 35, it's showing an increase in recycling rate for Q1. And just to remind this committee that the figure is reported a quarter in arrears due to the reporting timeframes with DEFRA. The yellow line here is the council's recycling rates, which positively is slightly higher than the same quarter last year. And the black bar is showing a decrease in residual waste, which is encouraging. And that concludes the report for the committee to note, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kat. Do we have any questions for Kat? John? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Fire away.
There's no report about how many streets have been cleansed. I mean, do we have a target for the number of streets to be cleansed, or do we? And that would be quite useful, actually, rather than. I'm glad they're great, and there's so many A clean streets, but also it's how many as well.
So there's no target for the number of streets that they have to cleanse. It's a output performance of the contract. So the council requires ECSS to clean them to a certain grade.
Because we're coming up to lots of leaves at the moment, and certainly in the villages, but I think they've more trees and more of a problem.
Yeah, I can take it away. We don't ask the ECSS to clean a certain number of streets. So that was kind of what we discussed previously about.
Sorry, Kat. I think what they have is they have a rolling programme on certain, do you remember the zones we sent out? Zone 1, 2, 3, 4. So depending on what zone you're in, that's how often the streets will be cleaned rather than how many were done. So I assume that we're still on target for the zones, being that the targets for the zones to be met.
Yeah.
Yes. So as long as, depending on what zone you're in, you'll be whether or not you get a 1 weekly, 2 weekly, or 4 or 6 or 8 weekly rotating cleanse, so to speak.
But then you've just said that it has been done. Would that not be a good thing to put in the report as a measure? We've done.
Yeah.
So these KPIs are agreed as part of the contract and business plan. So we wouldn't change them during this year. But I think what we don't want to do is chase the number of streets we clean. We want to ensure that the district is clean to a certain output level, which is this grade A. Because if a street doesn't need cleansing, then we wouldn't do it. Whereas if we're chasing the number of streets as a KPI, it actually might increase costs into the service if we don't need to cleanse somewhere. Where we have acute issues, such as a particular area where there's lots of leaf fall and that is reported, we will respond to that because it's about getting it to a certain level of cleanliness rather than the numbers.
Does that make sense, John?
Their little brain has to.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Inskip.
Yeah, well, a couple of questions. The first one is on the recycling rate. So it's really good to see it's back up again. But do we have any insight as to why it sort of dropped so low? And the other one was just in terms of, I've raised this before, but in terms of sort of social media and East Cambs Recycles, we talk about a 3% increase, but we've got still only 189 followers in a district of quite a lot more people. So has any thought been given to how you can boost that because we really need to sort of not just add 3 or 5%, we really need to try and get that number up to a few thousand ideally, or yeah.
So the recycling rate, it's a national trend that it went down. There's not really any reason as to why it's gone up. I mean, yes, like you say, it's good, but we don't know why it's fluctuated. Regards to social media, yes, we're looking at that. We tend to, at the moment, the council will reshare anything that's put out through the East Cambs Recycles page. And then moving forward, I think it is something we need to be looking at as to whether what's the best use of that page and whether it's, yeah, we need to look at that and that is being done.
They're just delighted that the long-term sickness rate is coming down. Is that because people are getting well, or are they leaving after long-term sickness, while they have long-term sickness?
I need to double check it, but mainly it's to do with the better management of the sickness. We've changed all the policies and updated them and provided the managers with support to implement them. In terms of whether people are getting well or not, I need to take that away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat, for your presentation again. I want to talk a little bit about fly tipping. So we've obviously arrived in a situation, we had I think it was 2 significant large fly tips in the north of the district in the last quarter. We're in a situation at the moment where ECSS has defined its own budget for fly tipping, which it exceeds when it has to, get the extra equipment in from hire. Could you talk a little bit about those situations specifically, and also how can we future-proof that relationship?
Good question. I think it's probably one to take away to board and things like that in terms of how that's managed. Certainly, yeah, it's paid for by ECSS at the moment, and obviously we report back through the accounts as to those costs currently.
But if I can illuminate the rest of the committee, we are talking approximately, I think your budget for clearing fly tips is about 12,000 a year. Is that
Yeah.
right? These particular 2 fly tips, I believe, cost in the region of 40,000 to remove. Is that right? Yeah. So just to give you an idea, almost 3 times the budget to remove 2 fly tips. And so far not been able to trace, just to give you an idea of what's going on. Any other questions for Kat? In which case, thank you so much for coming, Kat. If I don't see you before, have a wonderful Christmas. First time I've said it. Sorry, everybody. Sorry. Are we happy to note the contents of this report? Thank you, committee. Now we move on to agenda item 8, which is the budget monitoring report. Good afternoon, Ian. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We are currently forecasting 2 overspends and 1 underspend on the revenue budget for operational services, as detailed in 3.5 of this report. The net impact of these is a committee overspend of £325,000. We are also forecasting a near £2 million capital underspend, where 2 schemes in relation to wheeled bins in the bereavement centre, the costs will now be incurred in 25-26 as opposed to 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Do we have any questions for Ian? In which case, do you have a question, Lucy?
Mm.
Yes, over to you, Lucius.
Thanks, Ian, for the report again. It's, as always, it's clear and it's looking like a positive trend given the situations, particularly with planning. I wanted to ask about the additional SIL. We've obviously significantly increased the SIL receipts since last time. When it says that balance is transferred to the reserves at year end, is that £604,000 figure? Is that what we're expecting to transfer to reserves come year end?
Now, that's the value as at the end of September. So the likelihood is we'll get more SIL receipts in between now and the end of the year. But equally, there may be expenditure on the SIL budget in the intervening period as well.
Councillor Inskip.
I have a question. I suspect Ian will struggle to answer it, but it would be good to have some more background on the challenges in terms of spending the disabled facilities grants, because you know, we're seeing again, and I think we've seen it in the past, slippage. So we're bringing forward money each time, but I'm sure the need is there. So it would be
Yeah,
good
I
to
think that
understand.
would probably be, who would be that? That would be, would that be you?
Yeah, I can sort of answer that question.
Perfect.
So yeah, so part of the challenge we have with spending it is getting approval for the spend where the household doesn't meet the requirements of the registered provider. So for example, if you've got a single person living in a home that's maybe got 3 bedrooms, the policy is not to approve disabled facility grant changes. It's something that is a sanctuary policy, and it is often actually a registered housing policy anyway, provider policy. But it is a concern for us because we members might recall that we actually upped the amount of spends that we wanted to put forward for these because we were concerned that we weren't reaching those people, and it does mean that those individuals will still be left needing support but not being able to get it. So it is something that I'm actively raising with Sanctuary because they're our largest provider obviously in the area, but it is something we have raised.
Is this, it's a follow-up, yes. Is this also true for private residences? That if there's one disabled person in a private residence, where there are 2 others or 3 others?
No, so if they own their place, then they're more likely to be able to have that implemented. If it's private rented, then obviously it would be the landlord that would have to approve it anyway. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so and the other thing I did hear that probably there weren't enough occupational therapists to actually decide whether it is needed or not. Is that true or not? I mean, just a rumor I heard.
I don't comment on rumours. No, I don't know, to be honest with you. It's not something I've heard. There was a bit of a lull in applications coming through to us, but I don't think it's an ongoing issue, but I will ask the team. It hasn't been brought to my attention.
But does an occupational therapist have to approve or decide whether it is?
Yes, they do, yeah.
But, okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions for Ian? In which case then, thank you very much, Ian, and we're happy to note the report. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 9, and I'd like to welcome Peter Ord, who's our Scientific Officer for Environmental Services, to present the air quality strategy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yeah, just a bit of background to the air quality strategy. For a number of years now, we've been doing air quality status reports whereby we do monitoring of the ambient air quality in the area and then report it to DEFRA and publish it. The agenda has grown in recent years whereby we have to report what the council's doing more generally. It's not just a case of monitoring, and that side of things seems to have taken over a bit from simply reporting air quality data. As regards to strategy itself, the previously local authorities didn't have to produce air quality strategies unless they had problems in their areas, in which case they had to produce a strategy to say how they would deal with that. But now everybody's got to produce one. And this has come out of the Environment Act 2021, the policy and technical guidance. So I produced this air quality strategy, and I base it on the latest air quality strategy from DEFRA, which sets out basically what they expect local authorities to do. So I've kind of shadowed that and just said at each point what we are doing and what we tend to do. So we are compliant with what DEFRA has decided its local authority should do. So at a very high level, it says DEFRA say that every local authority must have regard to the National Air Quality Strategy in the exercise of their functions. So I have sort of done a check to make sure that we're doing that, and I'm quite sure that we are. It's quite an aspirational document. I think the National Air Quality Strategy, it's a very high level document. It's very light on actual details telling us what to do. And of course, air quality in recent years, it is very much, the agenda is very much changing. And certainly, I think the monitoring side of things hasn't really caught up with that. So there's been a big focus in recent years to changing from, for a while we were concentrating on emissions from motor vehicles and nitrogen dioxide. It's now moved on to particulates and PM2.5, and it's also moved on to, there's been a big emphasis on poor air quality due to burning of wood in wood burners and fires. And that was a big thing last year, which DEFRA were concentrating on. There's probably changes down the line in what we got to measure, but we haven't been told what they are. Yeah, I don't think there's really much more I can say about that. As I say, we're just kind of waiting to see, we have been asked, for instance, to, the government wants to move to targets for PM2.5s, and, we've said we'll obviously support them in that, but we haven't been told exactly what to do. The other thing is the agenda is changing a bit, and that people are saying, well, there's, for instance, with PM2.5, fine particulate matter, there's actually no safe limit, so we should just be trying to push them down anyway. So there's been a move away from target, so we just have to wait and see what comes out from DEFRA. Yeah, so that's where we are basically with air quality. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Oh, hands going up everywhere. Oh, now hang on a second. Sorry, before we get to questions. We do need to vote on this. So do I have a proposer for this? Thank you, Councillor Goodall, and I will second from the chair. Do we have any questions for Peter? Martin, again.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, don't mind. One is don't seem to be any figures there. So what is East Cambridgeshire's mean concentration at this moment compared with the 2018 baseline?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
What is the East Cambridgeshire's mean concentration at this moment compared with the 2018 baseline, which is mentioned in the report?
I think it's gone down compared to the 2018 baseline. Which page of the report is that in?
Oh, no.
I think I reported this in the air quality status report, so it's not likely to.
Yeah, it's 1.2 the Environment Act on your report, page 51 of our agenda here. It says an average PM 2.5 population exposure reduction, the target of 35% in 2040 compared to the 2018 baseline. I'm just wondering what the measurements are at this moment.
Well, we don't actually measure PM 2.5 anyway, you see,
Right.
so that's another
okay.
Sort of. But I think, well, we measure nitrogen dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide is a good indicator of what the PM 2.5 would be anyway. So if the nitrogen dioxide levels have gone down, that's a pretty good indicator that the PM 2.5 levels have gone down as well. And they have gone down since 2018. They're going down year on year, mainly as a result of changes in engine technology.
Yeah. Thank you very much. On page 57, you mentioned ASRs for East Cambridgeshire are published in the council's website, and it's not been necessary to declare any AQMAs in East Cambridgeshire. Does this mean that our concentrations are below the legal limits that were required?
Well, all the concentrations are below the legal limits, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And my final question is, are we working in cooperation with our neighbouring authorities? As you mentioned in the report, pollutants travel long distances. And obviously, if we do all the hard work, it'd be very frustrating if neighbouring authorities are not carrying out their duties to their full potential as well, because we're still being polluted by them.
Well, well, we do talk to local authorities, but I wouldn't say that any of them are sort of creating excess pollution, which they export over here and vice versa. I mean, with PM 2.5, they're regarded as being kind of transnational pollutants as well. That's why that's why local authority don't measure them. That's why central government takes responsibility for that and reporting it. If that answers your question.
More questions for Peter? John, is that your finger up? Mark, who was first?
Yeah, it's not directly on the strategy, but I'm just keen to understand what it is we actually measure and we don't measure, because I honestly don't have much visibility of that. So, you know, what data do we have in terms of the air quality in the district? And
we measure nitrogen dioxide using diffusion tubes, which give you an average over a month, and then they give you your annual mean, which is what we have to report under the air quality regulations.
yeah, I'm familiar with that because we've done that actually ourselves in Sutton to see where the issues were. So is that the only thing we do, is the NOx?
Yeah, that's the only thing we do now, yeah.
I'm surprised that we're not measuring PM 2.5, as it is going to be something that has to be done.
No, we're not required to measure PM 2.5.
We're not required, but we're required to reduce it below whatever it is, 10 micrograms per cubic meter by 2040. So we ought to be saying where are we at the moment or not?
Well, I don't know if we are at that at the moment. We're certainly within the air quality regs at the moment, which is 40 micrograms per litre for PM 2.5, and we can be quite confident that we are meeting that. But the other thing is the air quality regulations that we work to at the moment don't require that anyway. It just talks about PM 10s.
Any other questions before we move to debate? Thank you very much, Peter, for attending. Does anybody have anything they want to say on this before, or shall we? Mark?
Yeah, so the strategy itself, I really don't have any issue with, but it goes back to my question, trying to understand what we do and what, you know, so, yeah, I welcome the strategy, you know, I have no problem in approving it, but I just wonder whether it would be good to understand just what, to have some more concrete proposals around what we can and should be doing around air quality. Because if I read the summary of local actions to maintain and improve air quality, they're all quite generic. So monitor and report air quality. So I'm assuming that at the moment that is just the NOx part. I'm not sure what we're doing around planning applications to protect air quality. So it'd be good to understand that a bit more. The sustainable transport is all well and good, but what is it we can do there? It talks about ultra low emissions vehicles. Let's also try and do something for zero emissions vehicles, because they're even better than ultra low emission vehicles. I do wonder, because we talk about moving the council's vehicle fleet to cleaner fuels. Now, HVO is great for carbon footprint, but it only reduces NOx, I think, by about a quarter. So you still get quite a significant amount of NOx reduction. Now, I know I think that's the best option for the short term, but if we're looking longer term, I think, you know, that as the technologies improve, maybe there's more options there. So it would be good if we, and again, when we're talking about taking actions against landlords where there are issues with indoor air quality. I just feel that certainly as a member, I don't have enough awareness of what we are actually doing today and what we could be doing. So I'm happy with this report, but I think it'd be useful to have as a follow-up, something that informs us a bit more on, let's say, what are the statutory requirements today? What are other authorities doing, and where do we fit with that, just to get a better understanding of the whole topic.
I kind of think, oh, this is like a skeleton and we'd like to see a bit of flesh. That makes sense. It's a very good basic strategy, but as you say, sort of, it's more nuts and bolts. I mean, I'm not scientific at all, so the sort of, you start mentioning PMQ squared and things, I suddenly think I'm back in school and it's algebra and I haven't done my homework. So for me, I found this a very easy report to read. But I agree. I think we probably need a little bit more detail, but this is just the strategy. And I'm sure that we can flesh it out over in time to come. Who was first? John, is your hand up or you're just?
Thank you, Councillor Travis. That's very kind. I think, Chair, you hit the points on the head there. This is obviously something that needs to underpin a variety of the council's actions. So I think it is appropriate at this stage that we're not being vague, but we are not quantifying the targets in some areas where we don't either have the information at the time or we're sort of wanting to future-proof things should they change. So I'm very, very happy to support the strategy. And I think, yeah, if it would be great as members to have a view of the implementation of the strategy as well. Obviously, it's a national requirement, and to be able to benchmark against national requirements would be very useful going forward.
And,
I mean, we're coming up to doing a local plan, so maybe we ought to be thinking about some of the planning laws. For instance, do we want chimneys? Do we want our housing to be chimneys? I know Councillor Hunt would be very sad about to lose chimneys, but maybe that's something maybe we ought to think about putting in the local plan. And the same thing going with sustainable well, it's not only sustainable, it's where you put the things, where you put new development, so that you actually reduce particulate emissions through travel, basically car travel. So yes, sustainable transport, very good, but also many developments that we're doing are not in the right place. And I think promote active travel. I'd like to see more about it. Can we do something in the council? And the other one is landlords of rented properties. Do we have enough inspectorates for this? Do we get many complaints? And do we get, because this seems to be one of the crucial things, is actually the air quality in houses. Do we have enough inspectors? I don't know where we go. I mean, maybe we ought to have something about that. And it comes up in a later report, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I was just thinking to myself that this strategy is just another part of the environmental plan. And surely this is just another chapter within that. And like I agree, there should be more meat on this, some measurements we can use as guide to where we are, i.e. the baseline putting down as 2018. What was that baseline? And where are we within that now? Which is a very good way of seeing how we're progressing with our air quality. The planning side of it, again, we have a local plan coming up, and this is also going to be a part of that. We're planning, as you know, the biodiversity and everything else goes into planning at the moment. So this is just another string to that bow as well. So I would like this strategy to go forward, but yes, it needs improving and moving on with some figures and facts with it.
To move to the vote. All those in favour of approving the air quality strategy? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we move on to agenda item 11. which is the public space protection order, or, oh, beg your pardon, I raced through, sorry, do beg your pardon. A review of the houses in multiple occupation licensing fees. Welcome, Karen. Off you go.
Thank you, Chair. So the HMO licence fees haven't been reviewed for several years and not since the new licensing regime was introduced in 2018, which required shared properties with 5 or more persons from 2 or more households with some facilities shared to be licensed. So previous to that, it was only the larger 3-storey dwellings that needed a HMO licence. They took the requirement for a number of stories out of the system. Anybody with 5 or more needed a licence. So licence fees must accurately reflect the cost of administering the process, but we can't include council costs for enforcing regulations in our calculations. Obviously, larger the property, the more time it takes for officers to do the administration and the property checks. Renewals of licences are less resource intensive, therefore any fee should fairly reflect this. And we have several renewals coming through in 2025. Currently, there's 20 licensed HMOs in East Cambs. There may be more out there. We undertake investigations when reports are received. And of the 20 licensed premises, 6 have greater than 7 occupiers, with our largest one being 120 occupier accommodation. This is obviously from one of the local studs. These do tend to be well-run and safe properties, but the inspections and renewal of the documentation does involve greater time. More so than the straightforward 5 or 6 bed standard HMOs that we have, although we do find that those could be the more problematic ones with respect to not meeting the standards, understandably. So that's just a quick run through, and I request that members approve the recommendations as stated, and happy to take any questions about HMO licensing.
I'm going to say any questions and waiting to see hands flying up. Okay, all right. Before we do that, though, I will propose this, that we adopt this from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Christine. Sorry, I'm all over the place today. Right, any questions for Karen on this? Christine.
Thank you. So an HMO has to be licensed and they have to pay the set fee. Before they receive their license, is the property inspected that the electrical stuff is fine, that it's in a clean and decent situation? And then when the license is renewed, is it periodically inspected again to, I mean, on the TV, and we know we only hear the horror stories, but some of the accommodation that you see is deplorable. And I just so firmly feel that everybody should be able to live in clean and decent accommodation that is safe. And I just wonder if this is the case, or are you really just saying, well, okay, you pay the license, you know, that's it.
The legislation doesn't require us to inspect before we approve a licence, but here in East Cambs we do, only because we don't have a huge number at the moment that we know of that come to us for a licence. There may be some out there that we're not aware of, which may be in poor condition, but we do inspect all of them, and they have to comply with the myriad of regulations under housing, private rented sector housing, and that includes gas safety, annual checks, electrical safety, 5-yearly checks, all those checks. And part of the licence application is that we would review those. So there can be a lot of documentation. Fire risk assessments are required. Identification of their checks on their fire alarm systems. So we have to see all that documentation, and we do that before we would offer a licence. And then once they're licensed, it's really a risk assessment and understanding the landlords and understanding how often they may need to be inspected. Thank you.
I just wanted to congratulate you on inspecting all the properties. if, as other councils don't seem to be doing. And thank you very much. That's great. Yeah.
I suppose the big issue, the thorny issue here is that there could be lots of these, but unless people tell us or tell you, there's no way of actually knowing, and the unscrupulous landlords will deliberately avoid applying for a license because they don't want to spend out any money and they can possibly abuse the system. So I suppose what I'm asking everybody is, if you hear of anything, then it needs to be reported straight through to environmental services to let them then go ahead and inspect, because 20 doesn't seem an awful lot. But then I suppose if one has got 120, that was extraordinary, and a stud. Good Lord. Good Lord.
One of the hostels in the stud.
Ah,
Yeah, so
Sorry,
they're
yes.
obviously workers within the
yes, yeah,
within the environment.
still a lot. So yes, I think we all need to do our bit and look round our patches and see if we can see this. If there is any illegal behaviour going on, then we need to report it through to environmental services. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Just touching, I know where that one is. It's in my ward. Obviously, I've got quite a few of them. How often would we inspect that one?
That one's one of our best ones. The stud operators are good. They have all their certificates, so we would only inspect that at initial application stage. They're coming up for their renewal, which is 5 years, so we'll inspect it again. But they're not the ones that we necessarily have to worry about.
Come back on that. Yeah, I would agree. So knowing the individuals, yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions for Karen? Shall we move through to the debate, or are we happy to vote on this? Has anybody got anything they want to say? In which case I'll move to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Now we move on to the public space protection order for dog fouling. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. The current PSPO, Public Space Protection Order for dog fouling, comes to an end in January 2025. So to enable the authority to continue to enforce against persons who fail to pick up after their dog, the PSPO requires renewal in January 2025, and the renewal will be in place for a further 3 years, and that's what the regulations require, maximum of 3 years. Enforcement of the dog fouling under the PSPO is a challenge. Not many residents are either willing or able to provide a witness statement, and the resource required to sit and wait to catch people is not a good use of officer time. However, we do have some successes, not necessarily through serving fixed penalty notices. So just some figures for you, bit of background. In 2023-2024, ECSS received 54 reports of dog fouling on the streets, but that's obviously instance of the dog fouling being seen, not the action itself. So we had 7 reports, and these ranged from parish councils reporting areas of concern to a few individuals reporting specific addresses. So as a result of that, 1 community protection warning and 3 sort of general warning letters were sent out as a result. Often these issues are wider than just the dog fouling. We had one where it was repeatedly wandering and straying, therefore they wouldn't have known if it was fouling and not being picked up. So it was causing a general nuisance as well as the fouling aspect. We had 1 case with videos, a dog being allowed to foul on 3 or 4 occasions, probably from somebody's Ring doorbell, but the resident just couldn't identify the owner or the address where they lived. So without that, it's very difficult for us to serve fixed penalty notices. So education and promotion remains a key aspect of our action and our work in this area. If this PSPO is adopted and the additional fine of £100 rather than £80 is agreed, then we will then promote it quite heavily on social media and to the parish councils, and to impress upon people the need to identify the perpetrator and to be prepared to provide witness statements, and also work with ECSS to identify hotspot areas for our increased focus. But the dog warden does do a lot. In May and June, she did monitoring in Cheveley and Burwell, where concerns have been raised by the parish council. New signs, talking to people, you know, with their walking their dogs. She also went to Dullingham and stood outside the school because there was problems reported there. So she talked to the parents, and again, put up new signs and really just raised awareness of the need to report if people see somebody and to try and identify who that person is. In July, few hours monitoring undertaken somewhere in Ely, again, replacing signs and talking to people as she was out and about. So that's the challenge, but we won't be able to do any of the enforcement without the adoption of the PSPO, because that's the baseline. So other wider work with environmental crime does continue. You know, fixed penalty notices are served for all sorts of areas, you know, and community protection warnings, not just for dog fouling, for waste accumulations, untidy gardens. So there's a lot of general environmental crime enforcement work going on. Dog fouling is one of our more challenging ones. So thank
Not
you.
helped by the dark winter nights where people go
No.
out undercover.
No.
Okay, do I have a proposer for this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Proposed committee accept the recommendation in the report.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Thank you, councillor
that.
Sharp. Does anybody have any questions for Karen? Mark, over you go.
Yeah, I just wanted to explore the enforcement a little more. I've got, you know, no problem in terms of putting the new order in place. But obviously you obviously talked about the challenge of enforcement. So what would you need to be able to issue a fixed penalty notice? So apart from a council officer witnessing it, you talked about witness statements from the public. What's the bar that we have to meet if people are to receive a fixed penalty notice?
Well, failure to pay a fixed penalty notice would result in prosecution for the original offence. So the bar is quite high. You would have to be confident that you would be able to prosecute somebody. So the fixed penalty notice for service would be somebody would be willing to provide a witness statement to say that they saw the person at that time, that date, they knew the person, and also that they failed to pick the material up forthwith. So, you know, they need to be able to provide that information. What the successful one we had more recently was an individual who knew the person, saw it happened, approached them with a dog bag, thinking they may not have had one on them. And I think the abuse and the general attitude was such that they were more than prepared to provide a witness statement.
So that's the difficulty. It's finding people that are willing to sign on the dotted line and say, yes, I saw this, because they're afraid of repercussions. It's not easy. And we all know social media is absolutely rife with people saying dogs fouling. And often they'll get it, as you say, on their Ring doorbell, but they can't identify the individual and don't know the dog. So, I mean, I know most people in my village buy their dogs. I said, you know, lady who owns so-and-so, but don't actually know their names or where they live. So it is a challenge as a dog owner myself. You know, everybody knows where I live, unfortunately. So, but I always pick up. In fact, I will die picking up somebody else's dog poo, probably. Okay, do we have any other questions for Karen? I've got Alan and then you.
It's more comments rather than questions, if that's okay. Sorry.
You have no further questions? You have a question. Go on, Lucius, off you go.
Thank you, Karen, for bringing this report. Thoroughly agree with it. You mentioned that last year 54 incidents were successfully reported to the council. Do you have the figure for how many of those translated into FPNs?
I think they're the figures that go through to ECSS, which they advise me of. That they are just reports of the material being seen on the footpaths, not the actual people reporting seeing somebody allowing their dog to foul. So these are just for cleansing purposes. The ones that we receive tend to be the ones where people say, I've got it on my Ring doorbell, or I've seen a neighbour who I think is allowing their dog to foul in the play area. We would receive those reports. And those are the 7 that I've reported.
Any other questions for Karen? Okay, are we happy to move to the, would we like to have anything to say? Does anyone have anything to say on this? Go on, Alan.
Just very briefly, thanks for the report, Karen. And yeah, totally in support of the order. It's just touching on, you mentioned two of the three places you mentioned are in my ward. And certainly I wasn't aware of it, the issue outside Dullingham, outside Kettlefields. I will try and pick that up. The issues as I see it, and I've got a dog, I've walked him twice today. I don't see so much, certainly, and unless I'm missing it totally, because it's right in front of me, if you pardon the pun, but I see the bigger issues around on the actual footpaths, i.e., you know, the green footpaths around the villages and on recreation grounds, which is where the issue at Cheveley certainly is. There is an issue there. And it's, as you said before, it's a question of how we catch people, or more importantly, how we stop them doing it. We've put, certainly in some of the villages, we've put notices up on some of the, or some have been put up on some of those rural footpaths. But it's a question of education, because I'm sure a lot of people obviously don't care or don't realise, I think is the two issues. And somewhere else I walk a lot, which is parts in my ward and parts in Suffolk, which I think Councillor Huff will know where I'm talking about. Again, we've got a similar issue there, and it's under the public, I forget the actual wording of the legislation, but it's under the Open Spaces Act, so it is covered by that. But I think that's where I'm in. I don't know how other members have got, but that's where my issues are. You can be walking along a footpath, and if you haven't got a dog and you're walking along, you see that, or you tread in it, then it's not very nice. But it's how we educate, I suppose. And
I just find I don't understand why people get a dog if they're not prepared to pick up after it. Get a cat, get a goldfish, get a stuffed dog, but don't get a real one and take it out and allow it to foul anywhere. You know, it's just, I don't understand. And I think I don't know. I'm guessing that maybe some children said when they get home from school, do your homework, walk the dog. I mean, I don't know how many teenage children want to pick up dog poo, but I mean, mine have always been told to do it after, if they're out walking, and they always carry. I mean, if I go into my pocket now, I've probably got a poo bag in my coat pocket. It's just something I think that we have to educate. It's all about education, parents educating their children, environmental. I mean, we just need to educate. See, if you're going to have a dog, you have to be prepared to pick up after it. And there is nowhere that is you're allowed. If you want to do it in your back garden, knock yourself out. But I mean, don't do it where other people have got to be, because pushing a buggy through it, I should imagine, is absolutely vile, absolutely vile. And then having to walk back, get that buggy back into your house. I can't imagine anything worse, especially if you're not a dog owner. And I think, do you mind me mentioning? Councillor Pettit lost the sight of one eye because of dog feces. So, you know, there is somebody who has been a victim of this when she was a child. So that's how serious it can be. It's not just about unpleasant, it can be actually life-changing. Does anybody else have anything they want to say before we move to the vote? All those in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Karen. Now we move on to the service delivery plans and a 6-month performance update. I think Isabel's going to give this to us.
Thank you, Chair. So we have the various services that report through to operational services and their service plans that were recently approved back in March last year. So this is their this year, sorry. So this is their 6-month update. We've provided a bit more narrative with requests from members previously against each of the targets, but we've also provided a sort of RAG status on where the performance KPIs are met. And broadly, I think there's a real positive achievement from the services that are broadly reaching their targets. And some are still on track to be delivered because they're annual targets, so they won't be yet reported. So it's for members to note the report. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for, I love the new format, by the way. I think loving it. Excellent. Target off track, ongoing. I love it. Councillor Christine. Councillor Christine. It's been a very long day.
On page 93, the social media, you mention X, that was formerly Twitter and Facebook. Are there any other social media platforms that you have explored in sort of getting promotion out on things?
I'll take that as a way of question. I don't know the answer. I don't oversee that service, sorry. But I'll take that away.
If you could let us all know, Isabel, about that one. Any other questions? Go on, John. Never let me down, do you?
You asked for question. Page 97. The telephone, the penultimate box about answering the telephone, which I must say, whenever I telephone, I always find it very pleasant. The operator's always been very, maybe because I say I'm Councillor Trapp and they say, oh, wow, wow. But, you know, but I'm not sure why we have seconds there and not percentages. Is that the mean, 28 seconds for April? In which case, the times I've waited sometimes would mean that some calls would mean about 2 minutes. It doesn't seem right. I mean, I noticed for the emails we have percentages, so I'm not sure why we have seconds there, and I don't see what those seconds mean actually.
I will ask our service manager for that area,
Okay.
but yes. Good
And
point.
there's,
Yes, I see what you mean, John.
yes,
Yes, it doesn't tell you how many times it was exceeded in April. Is it a mean? Is it a mean? Oh, right.
well,
Okay.
if the mean is near 29 seconds, it must mean there's quite a few who have exactly. Page 109, the bottom purple box. 100% annually, but you say there's 50 disrepair complaints received, 25 disrepair complaints resolved. What happened to the 50 that weren't resolved?
Okay, I'll double check, but I'm assuming that they won't have had any statutory duties related to them where we couldn't intervene. So what we're saying is ones where we can intervene, then we would have done it. So, but I will just double check that.
But the other point is here, once again, you say 100% annually.
Yeah.
Are the 50, was that the whole annual total?
No, because we're only at 6 months.
So 6 months, all
Yeah.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Now, I had another one. Just keep this going.
Sorry, John, to stifle your flow, can you just, so you've received 50 disrepair complaints, and of those 25 have been resolved, is that right? Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Yes, so there's not 50 unresolved, so there's 25 of those currently unresolved because the target's on track and in fact we're not at the end of the year, John. Does that make sense?
Right, but it could be also, as you're saying, that they don't.
Well, they haven't got the
They're
statutory
complaints,
duty,
but they're not.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, and then there was, let's have a look, 12 I had.
Looking for his other question. Does anybody else have any questions for Isabel? Well done, Mark.
So just a comment. So yeah, I welcome the new format as well because it makes it much easier. Have you found your? No. No, I'll continue with mine. Yes. So it does help because there's a lot of information here and it helps to see where we should be focusing. I just got one question because I think John's asked most of the other ones that I had, but he gave me prior notice, so I was okay. On the licensing one, we've got this target to have the service request module populated to ensure compliance with the enforcement audit by September 2024, it says work on populating this module has commenced but not yet completed due to resource issues. So I'd like to understand a bit more about what that issue is.
What
And it
page
says-
number, Mark?
118. And it says external input required, estimated completion date in January. And just what does that, so I guess the first question is what are the issues and how are they being resolved? And given this was in response to be compliant with an audit, what's the consequences if it's taking us longer to be compliant with that audit?
Soon to be populated.
Yeah, so this actually relates to a similar issue that we're having with the waste module implementation. So we're requiring our provider that oversees our CRM to do this piece of integration work with this other supplier. And that continues to be quite challenging for us to book and secure that time, because we have to book a whole day's worth of resource and impact, resource and input. In terms of the audit, obviously this was an optional thing that we were wanting to do. So we're trying to sort of improve our processes. But I'll have a chat with the licensing manager just to see what the overall impact would be. Yeah.
Thank you. I might have to ask about that on Wednesday then. Yes.
That's handy, isn't it, Mark? Councillor Trapp, have you found it now?
Yes, I have. It's page
Excellent.
112, top blue box. I'm surprised about the target is that we have to have 250 households per year from becoming homeless. So we're trying to, I would have thought our target would be to actually not having people becoming homeless. Surely the target there is 100% relief.
Yes, it's actually something I raised as well with
Yes.
my service manager. Yes.
It's a bizarre phrasing.
Mm.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Everybody else think the same way? That just doesn't read quite. Because we don't have a huge amount of, as you can see, we've only 92 so far. 92 presented. Yes, that's true. So yes, maybe.
But I think that applies
You-
not because of anything we can do.
No.
It's how we react.
Yes, yes, yeah. And our housing team is excellent.
Not
I think I actually asked this question when we approved the service plans. I think this question got
Came
asked.
up,
And I was
yes.
given an answer, but I can't remember it.
Oh, fair
But
enough.
I did ask the
Yes.
same thing.
Well, when it comes up next time, well, hopefully it'll be resolved. Do we have any other questions for Isabel? John, any more questions?
the community sports facility grant, page 115, middle purple box, or is it purple magenta? Is it? I don't know. It's a pity the sports facility grant is not being spent. I mean, are we advertising it? Are we? What's happening? How do we spend this money? I mean, how do we get people to bid for this? Is the main thing. Be aware of this. Right. Well, we're going to have a real tennis court then in Slough and Bullbeck. I can see that. One in Newmarket. There's only one in Newmarket and two in Cambridge.
I think it had 2 courts, doesn't it?
No.
Doesn't it? Oh,
There's only one.
fair enough.
So
Any other questions, John?
no.
Does anybody else have any questions for Isabel, or are we quite happy to note this and move on? And we're noting and moving on then. Thank you very much, everybody. And we're now looking at, oh, for goodness sake, okay, come
It's
along.
page 122. I'm delighted that we're getting a S106 officer. And will they be actually sort of doing things like trying to make sure that S106 contributions are collected and sent out to parishes and used and everything else?
Exactly that. We'll be monitoring
Yeah.
and making sure we collect the money and getting it out in the right places. Yeah.
Okay, I'm delighted we're doing that.
I hardly dare ask John anything else
No,
before we move on.
just.
I'm exhausted with you today.
It does mean I've read the report.
It does mean, John,
Thank you.
I'm very, as a sub, I'm very proud of you. You've done very well. Okay, so we have the minutes of the ARP, of the Anglian Revenues and Benefits Joint Committee. Does anybody have any comments on these? Or are we happy to note? Happy to note then, thank you very much. And then we move on to the forward agenda. Now, forward agenda, everybody. None of the ECSS stuff will be coming forward because of the Easter holidays and they can't get everything through the Christmas holidays. Sorry. I've skipped an entire season. So the only thing that would be coming forward would be the housing and homelessness strategy. So I've already spoken with Councillor Inskip. I think it would be sensible to move that forward to the March committee unless anything of any urgency comes up and we can reconvene. But at this moment, I don't feel it's a good use of resources to have a council meeting for one item. Is everybody else in agreement? In which case, at this stage, ladies and gentlemen, you can clear your diary for the 27th. But if anything urgent should arise, then perhaps just put a bracket round it for now, just in case. Thank you very much. We now need to move to exempt matters. So can I have a proposer for moving into closed session?
Chair, proposed councillor
And Councillor Goodell, second. All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everybody attending. We'll now move into closed session.